Happy and pleasant morning to one and all present in this link. Myself, Dr. Neela, Assistant Professor of Chemistry, Raniyanna Government College, Tirunelveli, Tamil Nadu. First of all, I thank UGC HRDC of Gujarat University for selecting me as a participant of this first online refresher course in chemistry. Next, I thank our lovable coordinator Dr. Philip Vasava for giving this opportunity to welcome and introduce Honorable Resource Person Dr. N.V. Sastry for this session. I heartily welcome you too, sir. Sir's profile goes like this. Dr. N.V. Sastry is the professor and head, Department of Chemistry, Sardar Patel University, Vidyasagar. Dr. Sastry has a total teaching and research experience of more than 35 years. His present area of research interest is surface active amphibolic ionic liquids, synthesis, colloidal and emulsification behavior, and engineering applications. He has published more than 95 research papers in journals of international repute with more than 3,000 citations and H index of 36. 16 students were awarded PhD under his guidance. 13 major research projects sponsored by national funding agencies were completed. He is also coordinator of UGC CAS program, phase 1 and 2. He is a fellow of Gujarat Science Academy. He is associated with various professional societies. He has handled important responsibilities at the university level that includes member of syndicate, senate, coordinator IQAC, chief coordinator of UGC CPEPA program, nodal officer, DST post program, and as head in charge of Center for Interdisciplinary Studies in Science and Technology. Once again, I welcome Dr. N.V. Sastry sir to share his depth knowledge on polymer chemistry. Thank you, sir.
Hello, Dr. Neela. I think I'm very much appreciate the kind words which you have spoken about me. And
yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
I also congratulate the Department of Chemistry and the UGC HRDC of Gujarat University, whom we know for last so many years, and they have taken this initiative of reaching out the various faculty members. I think across the country, I am seeing here almost more than 68 people join, maybe 60, more than 60 participants. Normally, in a offline refresher course, we don't get more than 30. But in this case, the corona helped us in this way indirectly. More than 60 people participating in this refresher course in these times of stressful, stressful times, I can say. And then from the comforts of your office or home, you can join a refresher course. So we should all congratulate and express our thanks to the organizers, especially the Department of Chemistry, Dr. Vasava is an young man, and also UGC HRDC to facilitate this program. And by the by, Dr. Dilip, how many, you are people from where? From Tamil Nadu to, how many states you have?
We are having, sir, more than 12 states.
Yeah, true. So this is really a national program. I'm happy to associate with it, and I hope I will justify your invitation.
Great.
Okay. So the background of the participant. Shall I begin now, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the background of the various teachers, the faculty members who are participating here. You are a participant, neither you are a student there, nor I am a professor here. We are simply interacting and refreshing certain aspects of chemistry, which ultimately will be useful to you. What we are going to talk is nothing new. They are already there. You must be knowing already. You must be using them. Only thing is we will just give a different perspective in about 1.5 hour time, whatever is given to us. And we hope that when you go back, you pick something from it and then ultimately use it in your teaching or your research work. So I'm hoping that you are coming from different backgrounds and different types of research work. I wanted to do a general method which is used in across the compounds, across the research work, a physical chemist, organic chemist, inorganic chemist, polymer chemist, material scientist. There are some methods, isn't it? So where they are applicable to all of these people. It's not even physics people, anybody, material science people, biomaterial people, any material, for example. In a chemistry, we deal with materials. In fact, if I say properly, we deal with matter. This matter material, they are concerned with each other. This matter comes from what? Matter comes from molecules. The molecules are formed from what? Atoms. Through these linkages, chemical linkages. There are both covalent as well as non-covalent type of linkages, which ultimately build up into molecules, and the molecules consist of the aggregation state, that is state of matter, what we call. One of the matter state is solid state, liquid state, and also the gaseous state. So any matter exists in these three forms. Matter can be micro, macro, nano, bio, non-bio, anything. So one technique which is useful across these materials is this thermal methods. Now, thermal methods of analysis is invariably used in a material, if you want to follow the material, for some information purpose. So my lecture will deal with the various techniques which are available, their basic principles, and some applications of that. For example, when you are talking about thermal methods, the name itself indicates that it is a method in which the response of a material under temperature variation. So what we are doing is we are changing the temperature, and once you change the temperature, what does this temperature change, how this temperature change matters to the material in terms of its response, or what type of changes are induced due to the temperature. Temperature is nothing but thermal energy. You know it, energy in different forms. So thermal energy is nothing but, thermal energy is measured in terms of temperature. The moment you are changing the temperature, you are changing the thermal energy, you are giving energy to the material. So what does this energy, how this energy affects the changes in the material? From these changes, we can understand lot of things. Let us see what information we can get. Now, when I say there are different methods, techniques, there are many techniques which are used or described in a textbook or practically used. One of the very common one is thermal gravimetric analysis, TGA, what they call. People say TG, but it's actually TGA, thermal gravimetric analysis. Here what we do, we measure. So one thing that immediately happens is that when you heat a material, this material will lose its mass because of some change. Now, in TGA, what we measure is weight loss, and why it is losing weight? Because of loss of water, loss of volatile. Suppose the material may consist some absorbed water, so it loses in the form of moisture, for example. Then we heat, so any water gets evaporated about 100, in case of a material up to 200 degrees, everything, even if there is a trace amount of water, that will go. The water which is expected, or the what you call moisture which is expected to be in any material, is of two types. One is as such the water which is absorbed from the air, and also some crystalline water. Some compounds have water as a part of the structure. So that is called crystalline water or coordinated water. So whenever we heat any substance, first thing what we expect is between 100 and 200 degree temperature, this water is lost. Whether water is lost or not, how many water molecules are lost, that can be monitored. The moment water is lost, water is having its own mass, so naturally weight loss occurs. So weight loss due to decomposition, if you measure, that becomes a thermal gravimetric analysis. And here you can construct a derivative of a TGA trace, and that comes a derivative thermogravimetric analysis. It is just like those people who are doing practicals in pH metry, conductometry, potentiometry. What we do, we measure pH versus volume, and then in order to get the peak point, what we do is a differential pH meter curve, d delta pH by delta V versus V. So the delta pH by delta V is differential. This differential comes from the original measurement. So same thing is here also. Okay, now the next technique is differential thermal analysis. Differential thermal analysis basically measures the heat of transition. How many transitions are occurring, PGA will tell us. But what type of transitions they are and how much heat is associated. How can we judge about the type of transition? Type of transition can be, transition means the thermal transition. Here I am talking about thermal transition, not the chemical transition. We are giving temperature, we are increasing the temperature, we are subjecting the matter for heating, and once we heat it, heat means we are giving temperature, energy, thermal energy. Then the thermal energy is absorbed, and because of that energy absorption, some transitions occur. And based on the heat, if you can measure the heat of transition involved, then you can have idea about the type of transition. And if you do this, that technique is called differential thermal analysis. Then we have differential scanning calorimetric. Both are differential, but it is a scanning calorimetric analysis. Calorimetric means here not heat flow is measured. That is, whether heat is flown into the substance or heat is flown out of the substance. Heat can flow from outside to the substance and from the substance to outside. Heat flows, that is called flow. Flow has always a direction. The direction can be from the air to the sample, atmosphere, rather than air, I can say atmosphere. From atmosphere to the sample or from the sample to the atmosphere. That flow if you measure, and that is also very, very important measurement for phase transitions. You might have heard about phase transitions. For example, for any simple thing, if you have a matter, if it is in solid form, when we heat, it melts. The melting is a phase transition. Phase transition of first order. And if again a liquid, then if you heat again, it becomes a gas, vapor. Then that vapor means it's vaporization, what we call as a boiling. Boiling is a transition, first order phase transition. So like that, this type of transitions or phase transitions can be monitored by using DSE. My lecture try to concentrate on these three because of the time. Otherwise, these lectures take 7 to 8 hours when you do it in an MSc or any detail. The other one is called thermal-mechanical analysis. Here we can measure thermal expansion coefficient, and another one is called dynamic mechanical analysis. We can measure viscoelastic properties. So I will not be dealing with these two at all, but these are very, very important modulus properties you can measure. By knowing these measurements, you can find out various properties, like particularly in polymers, we have polymers or even other materials, what is called a glass transition. People who are working like a glassy-like substances or metal oxides, so they will come across these glass transitions. So glass transition can be measured by the DMA. Of course, DSE does, but DMA is also very, very important property. And if you have samples like films, you have a sample, you have a material, but in a film form, not in a powder form or a solid form, but in a film form. And in the film, if you want to measure, for example, let us say glass transition or other transitions which occur, there are what is called solid-solid transitions. See, after transition, before transition, it looks like solid, but internally there is a change in its structure, change in its arrangement, change in maybe in crystallinity. So such things occur, and they don't reflect in the physical state before and after, but if you go into these measurements, then you will be able to see, yes, there is some solid transition. It's very, very common in research or in anything. So I will concentrate on PGA, DTA, and DSE as time permits. I will not be able to touch these two methods. If Dr. Wasawa, if he wants me back again, if there is a part I can think about later. Okay. Now, let us see, first of all, the basic principle involved in these methods. I have already been explaining you here what we do. The common is this: you take a sample, you heat it at a constant heating rate. Very, very important thing is you must heat. These are all research topics. These are all very sensitive measurements. So when I'm taking heat, so what is important is heating rate. What is the heating rate? For example, 1 centigrade per minute, 2 centigrade per minute, 5 centigrade per minute, 20 centigrade per minute. That is the heating rate. And this sample is heated but under constant heating rate. And then we take the property, so naturally property changes. Which property I'm explaining here, but the property change is measured as a function of temperature, sometimes time, or both. The instruments are built up. You can get the data of the property change during this heating as a function of temperature or time or both. It is the same. It is used for different purposes. The curve looks same. Temperature scale or time scale. Instrument can be both. Because I have heating rate, let us say 5 degree per minute. In 60 degree, it becomes 300. When I write temperature, I write 300. In terms of time, I write 60 minutes. One and the same. Okay. And what property? Suppose if you are weight as a property, if you measure weight change or mass change is measured as a function of time or temperature, it becomes a TGA. Now remember, many times, normally we expect a mass loss with temperature, but it is not necessary. Sometimes the mass is gained. If, of course, this is not a very offline lecture, otherwise I would have asked a question and back to the participants. Can you tell me a process in which mass is gained? I'm telling mass loss, okay, everybody knows, because loss of volatile matter, loss of water, and decomposition occurs, degradation occurs, naturally mass loss occurs. But can you tell me if anybody can open their mic and tell me, can you give me a process in which mass is gained under temperature change? So gain also can be seen. Mass gain occurs normally in rusting, for example. If somebody is rusting, the metal, the oxidation sometimes, many times in alteration of metal ions result into metal oxide formation. Metal oxide means mass increase. So if any process which ultimately leads into oxide formation, then you will have a mass gain also. So mass gain or mass loss is measured as a function of temperature. That becomes a TGA. In DTA, what we measure is temperature change, not mass loss. I told you already that in DTA, what we measure is the heat of transition. But here, for measuring heat of transition, what we measure is the temperature change, delta T. Delta T as a function of temperature. That is DTA. If you measure heat flow, then it becomes DSC, differential scanning calorimeter. And heat flow is very, very important. I told you already, direction from substance, out of the substance or into the substance, from atmosphere to the substance, from substance to atmosphere, direction, and magnitude, how much heat has flown. If you know, if you are measuring both direction and magnitude of the heat flow, then plot as a function of temperature, then you get a DSC trace. Okay, these are the two methods which we are not going to discuss much, but if you measure the change in size as a function of temperature, that becomes a thermomechanical analyzer. For material scientists, this is very, very important. Means in some materials, the size changes, the morphological features changes because of that size changes. Size, I'm talking about size in nanometers, size of certain phases, and they change their shape and morphology. So morphological changes are there, then you have this size change as a function of temperature. Of course, in DMA, dynamic mechanical analyzer, here mechanical properties are changing. For example, shear, strain, dynamic loading. Sometimes gas is also evolved, and this gas evolved gives an information, very important information, and then you can analyze that. So you can find out the complete decomposition degradation mechanism by measuring this gas evaluation and analysis. As far as the sophistication instruments are concerned, many times the TGA is now mixed with mass spectroscopy, TGA-MS. So TGA is directly, whatever gases are evolved, these gases are fed into a mass spectrometer, and mass spectrometer analyzes the gas which is evolved, and from that analysis we can find out the decomposition mechanism. So this is about the basic principles involved. Now let us discuss about TGA in a nutshell. So TGA is a technique in which the mass change is measured. This is what is already, what is it? So this is the same thing. And why do we use it? Because why we require a TGA? Because the characteristics of materials are changing because of the thermal heating in the form of mass loss or gain. And by this mass loss gain, what we can understand? We can understand decomposition process. How it is decomposing thermally. What happens to the material? Oxidation. Whether there is any oxidation, loss of volatile, for example, moisture, including moisture. Many times when we synthesize the compounds inherently contain some residual solvents or residual gases which are involved during the synthesis, and these gases are absorbed inside, and those gases can be evolved. So that those are called loss of volatiles. And of course, we can get the information of thermal cracking, how the molecule is cracked or broken under this thermal variation condition. So how does it work? The TGA instrument continuously weighs a sample and it is heated. Heating can be done in dynamic and isothermal mode. That means you can have a mass loss change as a function of temperature, or that is called dynamic. Normally we do dynamic TGA measurements. Dynamic TGA measurements give you mass loss as a function of temperature. But when it comes isothermal method, isothermal mode means here what happens? Isothermal method means we are fixing the temperature and trying to see the mass loss as a function of time. As a function of time. Temperature is fixed. This is very important in order to understand the storage stability. This is very important in case of pharmaceutical substances. So don't think that organic chemistry, pharmaceutical chemistry, how these thermal techniques are useful to them. For example, when I have a bioactive compound, I have a drug, I want to know the storage life of this drug. Otherwise, every substance will have an expiry date. What is this expiry date? It is losing its stability. Why? It is decomposing. Something is happening chemically, physically. Physically it happens, it will decompose into constituents. So it will no more a drug. So that is, you have a what you call expiry date. If you want to know the storage life, how long, how much time this is, stable, then you have to do an isothermal measurement. This is the only way to find out the storage life. The results are plotted as a weight loss or mass against temperature or time, and you get a TGA trace. So I told you dynamic TGA. I think I changed it from one computer to another. There is some disturbance here in the sentences. Where the sample is subject to continuous increase to temperature. So that is dynamic TGA. Then isothermal TGA, I told you, isothermal TGA means mass loss you are measuring, but you are monitoring that mass loss as a function of time. Then there is one quasi-static TGA where the sample is heated to a constant weight at each of a series of increasing temperature. That means quasi-static means you can fix a temperature, then measure the mass loss as a function of time. Okay. Then you take another ramp, another temperature difference, then you measure it. So during this series of increasing temperature measurements, you are measuring the mass loss as a function of time. That is called quasi-static TGA. Okay, in a TGA, the heart of the instrument is what is called precision balance, because you are measuring mass loss or mass gain. Can you imagine this mass loss or gain is measured in what? For example, milligram or microgram. How much mass loss change you can measure? So the substances which are taken basically in milligrams, few milligrams we take, maximum 5-6 milligrams, not more than that. In this 6 milligram, then it is losing mass. So from milligram to microgram level, even if it tends to -6 gram change is there, the modern equipment measures. So depending upon the sensitivity of the mass, your instrument costs. A typical TGA instrument nowadays, simple TGA, not attached to any other things, it will cost 25 to 30 lakhs. So because the microbalance is very important, this microbalance is here. This is a typical diagram of that one. So let us say how the balance works. The balance works on a null balance principle. Null principle, what they call. null position equal amount of light. Okay, what they do here is that here you have the balance here. You have two photo diodes. This is a light which is thrown at them, and if there is a mass loss, then they change in this beam, and then it measures that photodiode, shifting of the photodiode, because one diode is able to measure the light, other diode is not able to measure the light because of the shifting in the balance, because of the mass loss here. And so what you do, it applies the, it wants to bring the balance back to the null position by measuring by passing some current. How much photo current is applied to nullify this disturbance in the balance position, the pan position, we measure that amount current. This amount of current which is to be applied to restore the balance position is proportional to the weight loss or gain. So this is for the instrument part. So basically, two photodiodes are there, and there's a source of light, and there's a balance. Heating is done. Because of that heating, the weight change occurs. Now, then because of the balance is shifted, because of the balance shifted, one of the photodiode will not give response, and then the response is restored back by passing that photocurrent, and how much photocurrent you have applied, and that is proportional to the weight loss or weight gain. So you can have a TGA measurement at constant heating rate. We can get the idea about initial temperature, final temperature. We get the data. Data is weight loss versus time, weight loss versus temperature, and we can have the differentiate this data and form and plot the DTJ. So typical TGA curve, this is an example of some compound, is measured like this. It looks like this, S type, reverse S type, and for example, take this case. I have 100 weight loss versus temperature for some compound, and normally the substances are heated to the constant weight loss. Means there is a weight loss in the beginning. The weight loss was constant in the beginning. After a certain temperature, this is changing drastically, then remains constant, then again changes, then remains constant. So each of these steps indicates how many types of decomposition. For example, in this case, 1, 2, 3. There are 3-step decomposition. It can be 1 step also. It can be 2 steps also. But in this case, it is 3 steps. That means we have to find out what is happening in this step, what is happening in this step, what is happening in this step. So 3 different decomposition steps are there, and each step is having a different type of initial temperatures, final temperatures, and the peak temperatures. Peak temperature is here somewhere in between this particular height. So peak temperatures are different, initial final temperatures are different, substance is the same, we are heating, we're getting 3 steps. So that means here the degradation or decomposition is in 3 steps. That is the information we get straight away. Qualitatively, immediately we can get this information, saying that the decomposition is occurring in 3 steps. So what are these 3 steps? Then we have to think about what is the compound, what is the structure, what is the possibility. Then you have to find out the mechanism of that. So TGA is a very good guide for quality control and assurance. We can measure the failure of the compound. Failure means when it is totally decomposed, it is useless. So we can tell to the user saying that be careful, after this temperature, after this much time, this is losing its properties. So, for example, weight loss, I told you, weight loss occurs because of the decomposition, because decomposition means the breaking apart of the chemical bonds, and the evaporation. Evaporation is loss of volatile with elevated temperature. Reduction and oxidation, both will add the mass, and desorption. If any gases are trapped during the synthesis or in the atmosphere, gases are absorbed continuously, and those dissolved gases, these absorbed gases will be dissolved during the TGA analysis. For example, in these are the losses, these are the weight loss conditions, mass loss conditions. Mass gain also occurs in oxidation and also absorption or adsorption. Some material under heating absorb, some material dissolve, but some material absorb. Under heating, absorption occurs because sufficient kinetic energy is given to the gas molecules, so gas molecules absorb. If anything, absorption or adsorption is occurring during the heating, then you will get weight gain. Oxidation, weight gain. All these are kinetic processes. Kinetic process means they are dependent on the rate of temperature. So certain things which you see at slow heating rate, you will not be able to see at high heating rate. Reverse is also true. So any TGA measurement nowadays, there is one international commission on thermokinetic analysis. Now, those people who are working in research and probably are trying to show this data to the reviewers, they will say that at a simple heating rate, if you do, they don't accept nowadays. Minimum 3 to 4 different heating rates, you have to do the measurements and do the kinetic part of that measurement. Then only people are accepting now any TGA, DTA data in the publications, otherwise they don't do it. Okay, what TGA can tell? It will tell you about thermostability. We can understand about decomposition mechanism. Otherwise, we can say fingerprint materials for identification and quality control. We can also check about the oxidative stability during this process. And we can estimate the lifetime of a product, lifetime storage life. Decomposition kinetics of material. Decomposition kinetics, for example, Arrhenius equation, simple Arrhenius equation can be used, and of course that also requires under different heating rates. So then you can get the activation energy. There are 3 decomposition processes like this, what I have shown here. Are these 3 decomposition processes are same or different? That depends upon the activation energy, how much energy is required to activate this process. Since they are appearing at different time intervals or temperature intervals, both are not same. So depending upon that activation energy, we can find out what processes it is and what is the mechanism of it is. So kinetics is very, very important. Decomposition kinetics. Kinetics of this is monitored by conducting TGA experiments at different heating rates. People used to have Borodi equation or simple equations which they were using. Freeman and Carroll, Redfern, Course and Redfern. These equations are not going to work because they are different. They are based on a simple heating rate, single heating rate. Nowadays, you require TGA at different heating rates, at least 4 of them. So then we can apply Gonzaga equation. There are other equations. Greenwald-Ozawa equation. There are other equations internationally accepted, so we have to follow that. Okay, so this is what it is, what TGA can tell. That's what I said. The simple TGA looks like this. I showed you for a 1-step decomposition, and you can get the initial temperature by drawing tangents. You can get the temperature at which this process is initiated. By doing the tangent here, you can get the temperature which completion occurs, and from the derivative, you can get the midpoint. Midpoint is nothing but the peak height of this particular trace. You can get all this information, and sometimes these derivatives are used. Here, I want to show you a little bit fast, but see, a typical plots I have shown here. Let us say conditions like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, different 7 conditions. Same thing, mass loss versus temperature. For example, number 1. What is this number 1? You get only constant mass loss. So no mass loss or decomposition, so no loss of volatile material. Because the material do not have anything like that, then it should show you a constant line. But when you have it, sometimes like this, initially decrease and then remains constant. So rapid initial mass, characteristic of desorption or drying. If your desorption takes place, the material has got trapped gases and they are getting dissolved, so you get this initially like this, rapid loss, initial mass loss followed by a constant thing. If you have like this simple S type, it's a single stage or single step decomposition. 4th one, multi-stage. You see here, 1 step, 2 step, 3 step, like that. So it's a multi-stage decomposition. If you have a curve like this, you see, this is very important. This is a curve number 4. Every time it's not necessary that it's a constant, then decrease, then constant, then decrease. It's good. But sometimes, you don't get like this. You get like this. So here is also multi-step decomposition, but Intermediates which are formed are not stable. They are decomposing again. So if you get anything like that during a reaction product, you can say that thermally when we heat, this particular substance is undergoing decomposition, and the decomposed material is unstable. It is having some intermediate stability. Now it becomes stable here. At the end it became stable, but these intermediate steps, so this is the first step, this is the last step, intermediate steps was stable here because you get a constant thing, but you don't get a constant thing here. So because of that, the intermediate steps are not stable. Whatever is formed after the first decomposition is not stable. It is getting decomposed again immediately. So this is a fingerprint I told you. If you do a TGA, you will get a fingerprint of thermal induced changes in the sample. Now see, this is the gain in mass. Normally we expect a lower one, right? I mean, mass will last. But if it is like this, then you are getting a gain in mass. The gain in mass is one of the example of oxidative reaction. For example, sometimes what happens, gain in mass and then decomposition. So if you get a peak like this, a broad peak like this in the TGA, very, very important. That is why do the measurements very accurately, sensitively, and get the data. Be honest with the measurements. They convey some information to you. So you have to be very, very careful at every stage. Suppose if the TGA shows such hump here, initially constant, then hump, and then constant, that means here is what happening. There is a mass gain up to some temperature and immediately started decompose. So that is, this is the information we have about various things. Here, of course, a well-known example, calcium oxalate decomposition. So here is a DTA, three-step decomposition. This is the DTG. The DTG will give you the peaks corresponding to each of these processes. And then this is a well-known thing. I need not explain you. This is normally we do it in polymer practicals. So when calcium oxalate is a monohydrate, in the first step, what will happen? In the first step, calcium oxalate dehydrates and loss of water. So this calcium oxalate is formed. Calcium the oxalate monohydrate to calcium oxalate is the first step. Second step, this calcium oxalate converts into calcium carbonate and carbon monoxide. So this is the second step. And the third step, under high heating, calcium carbonate to calcium oxide. When the calcium oxide is formed, it is highly stable up to 1000 degrees, there is nothing will happen. Normally the TGA experiments are done up to 700, 800 degree temperature. In case of inorganic metal oxides, it can go up to higher, but anything beyond 800, you require a special furnace. So the equipment is very, very costly. The usual equipment comes with 700, 800. And for polymers, of course, 400, 500 is sufficient. But for other substances, you can go up to 800. Of course, in case of inorganic compounds, solid state reactors, you will have temperatures of 1300, 1400. But there are TGA instruments, but they have a special furnace, and that will cost too much. So, by just getting the TGA, DTG of a compound like this, calcium oxalate, we can get the information about the various decomposition steps. From these various decomposition steps, and by using our chemical formulas, we can assign the mechanism for each step. This I may not be able to do it because time is going up. So this is what I told you here. If you do a TGA of the same sample at different heating rates. Now, one classic example I want to give you here. For example, this violet color is the TGA of that compound, calcium oxalate, at 10 degree per minute. Of course, this is a classic example, but this is not true with others. I work with ionic liquids. Ionic liquids show a different behavior at the heating rate. But here it is case of calcium oxalate, which is a well-known compound. It will be at 10 degree per minute, 100 degree per minute, and you see there is a shift. The blue color is shifted. Blue color. Here is the violet color. Violet color peak, if you see, this is very small. But if you say 100 degree, from 10 degree to 100 degree, material is the same, instrument is the same. What I did was I kept simply changing the heating rate, 100 degree per minute. If I want to heat it up to Let us say here they have gone up to 500, no, 1000. So 100 degree for 10 minutes, my measurement is over. 100 degree per minute. If I do 10 degree per minute, it will give, you can see 80 minutes or 100 minutes. If you do 1 degree per minute, it will be 1000 minutes. So you have to wait for so long. Okay, now by this temperature heating ramp, what called ramping of temperature, they say. So 10 degree to 100 degree, what is happening? You are able to see the transaction, these transitions are there. These transitions sometimes get overlapped and the sharpness of the peaks also increases in case of calcium oxalate. But this is not true for all other substances. So heating too fast overlap transitions. True. So in that case, you become problem. Interpretation is a problem. So you need to have a, ideally speaking, 2.5 degree per minute. 1 degree is better. So low heating rate features are different from the high heating rate. High heating rate, sometimes you have interpretation problem. Okay, so but this data is required for kinetic analysis, for applying equations, kinetic equations, which I am not mentioning. This is an example I made it here to a typical uh, TGA of a polystyrene composite. Well, this particular polymer has got this composite. It has got a polyester part styrene. This is a polyester polystyrene composite. It's a blend actually. What I'm trying to tell you is, I have a TGA like this, dynamic. What does this mean to you? Or what does this mean to me? Okay. Here, what is the sample first? It's a blend of polyester, 71%, polystyrene 29, plus additives. Additives means fillers, then reinforcing agent, mechanical property improvement. So you get fiberglass and calcium carbonate in the filler. So it has got four components basically. It has got 71% of the polyester, 29% of polystyrene, plus calcium carbonate, and a fiberglass, glass fiber. Fiberglass is nothing glass fiber. And compositions are known because this composite is made by us, is a blend. So when you have a blend, then what we did, we take a 5 degree per minute in the air, it is heated from room temperature to 900 degree temperature. So you can see the fingerprint now. The first step is here, there is a second step, there is a third step. So these can be identified, what is happening. So here, the polyester decomposes here. This is how the polystyrene part is decomposing. This is the glass fiber which gets decomposed. And the calcium carbonate becomes the calcium oxide, and it gets here. Nothing happens to oxides 800,000 degree temperature. It's because there's a constant weight loss. Always remember, when you run a TGA, you must run till you get a constant in weight loss. Suppose you can't stop an instrument like this, then something is happening. So you should go to the high temperatures, or you change the temperature heating rate. So such type of complex blend, when it is decomposed, you can see the fingerprints of what is happening or what is available inside. You can see the decomposition process corresponding to each of the components. So from this figure, from this TGA, composition can be assured. I told you quality assurance. In industry, polymer composite industry, when they blend it, blending occurs properly or not, whether they are mixed properly or not, that the two components are independent to each other or they are blended means they are physical linkage. Then only you will have the desired mechanical property. Why we blend? We blend because polyester alone cannot be useful. Polystyrene cannot be useful alone for a particular application. But if I have a blend of polyester, polystyrene, and some calcium carbonate and glass fiber, then I get a composite, blend composite. That blend composite is very, very thermally stable and some other applications. Whether blending occurs uniformly, homogeneously or not, that can be seen from these TGA measurements. So from this we can get the percentage also. From weight percentage you can get the composition percentage also. So that's about TGA. Then there's a DTA. DTA is a differential thermal analysis. What they do is, I think, I don't know whether I have the other one. Okay, here one is. So DTA involves heating or cooling a test sample. So you have a, in a DTA, now things are a little bit different. Though it is the same thing, you are heating the sample. But what they do, take a sample here, we have a thermocouple here, we have a reference. There is a reference substance here, and this reference substance is such that nothing happens to it during this temperature damping. In the sample, of course, sample undergoes changes. It is taken in a furnace, and this is the typical diagram. Both are heated. Sample is heated, reference is heated, and the change in the temperature is measured. Change in temperature means reference to sample. In case of reference, nothing will happen because it's a standard difference. Here it is change occurs here. The difference here is plotted. The difference is then plotted against time or temperature. So if by knowing this, something is happening in the sample. Under the same condition, reference is very much stable, nothing happens. And this particular, whether the heat is absorbed or heat is evolved in the sample, we can measure. What we do? Absorption or evaluation of heat can be detected in the sample. Of course, absorption or evaluation of heat in the sample is detected with reference to the inert reference. Reference is inert. Same thing, sample and reference placed in a heater, and the same thing I did, and you have constant heating rate, and then temperature of sample versus time, temperature of reference versus time. The reference should be inert, nothing but latent. Okay. So a DTA instrument, same thing again shown it here, and ultimately you get the G delta T versus temperature. You get such a beautiful differential form of peaks. So from this we can get the heat of crystallization. We can get, for example, if you take the area under this peak, that area under the peak will give you heat of the process, in the case crystallization, or the peak temperature you can have, that will give you a glass transition from the peak temperatures and you measure. In fact, many times what happens, TTA is combined with TGA. This is a classical case I am showing you to show a crystallization. Many times, some substances, we have a crystallization at heating. We don't see crystallization by cooling in some substances. They get crystallized at heating. Can we see them? Yes, we can see them. For example, if you take a compound, this compound TGA is one step decomposition, and at the same time I run a DTA. This is not DTG, this is a DTA. You are getting a peak like this. So this is the exotherm, up, down. Yeah. Okay. So this is exothermic. Baseline above is exothermic, baseline below is endothermic. So you can see it here. There is an endothermic transition, there is an exothermic transition. We don't see this in TGA. TGA simply says that the decomposition is occurring in a single step. It starts here, it ends here, this is the peak point. TGA crystallization is simply a change in the order for element. It is not mass loss, mass change. So because of that, what happens? If you have a crystallization, which you don't see in TGA, but here it appears, you see 1000 degree about, it is crystallization. And what is this could be? This is dehydroxylation, because there is a mass change. Dehydroxylation, hydroxyl functional group is separated from the compound, and because of that mass change. So the first endothermic peak which we get it here corresponds to the peak point of the TGA, and that is dehydroxylation. But at high temperature, this particular substance is showing crystallization. Suppose if there is no baseline remains set, nothing happens. But don't miss the TTA. If you have a DTA, then you will see a crystallization. Crystallization is always ectothermic, like that. So you will get, so if you want to have a useful information of what is happening to my substance, then I advise you to run both DGA and DTA and expose them in the same graph and see what is happening. You will get very useful information. Another one classic example I want to show for the polymers. For example, here ABS. ABS plastic is well known. ABS is a tercopolymer. ABS is a tercopolymer. ABS plastic, you might have heard. Most of these cooker parts, the washing machine parts, and this grinder parts, they are of ABS plastic. They're very tough. ABS tercopolymer means ABS has got acrylonitrile, butadiene, and styrene. Three components, three polymers are inside. The polymer structures are shown here. So when I want to degrade this, I can see it here. I have run a DGA here and I have run a DTA here. DTA, you know, is like here. Okay. So what does this shows? ABS plastics, for example, in TGA, it is showing a first step and second step. It is showing a two-step degradation. The first step initiates 180 degree and then 480. And the second step begins at 480 and until 620 is decomposition. From the DTA curve, at least we see three peaks overlapping with each other for the first degradation step. This means that the first degradation is not a simple chemical reaction, but there are several reactions occurring simultaneously. If the DTA, see here actually the lighter way, this one peak, there are multiple peaks here during this decomposition. But multiple, generally what we expect is one peak. If you are getting one peak, then it's a one decomposition. But here, because of the ABS, acrylonitrile, butadiene, styrene, all are there, and because of that, multiple processes are occurring. It's not a simple chemical reaction it is producing after the decomposition. It is basically multiple, several reactions. So, and this other one is 340 for 480 point. Butadiene is coming at 340 and styrene at 350. So like that means this polymer chain is broken into its parts, and each of the polymer components have a different property, thermal property. Because of that, they get out or they decompose in different places, different stages, and all this can be monitored. So TGA, DTA basically gives you an idea about the fingerprints of the various decomposition processes which occur, and also the composition of the constituents of the material, particularly for composite materials, because you know in chemistry when we do a research, a single component will not do everything for us. So we have to mix so many things together, and that is what is called composite particles. Composites, blends, mixtures, alloys, particularly nanomaterial, nanoparticle research. Nanoparticles are substantial, nothing goes with them. But once they are impregnated into a film form or into a composite form, they start giving you properties. So such complicated and complex materials can be seen. One application I told you in food industry, a simple industry, you go to the market, you buy a butter, you buy a margarine. Margarine is also another type of butter, but it is cheap, and pure butter is butter. Suppose if somebody mixes these two, butter and margarine, both are mixed and sold. So when you go to a market, you don't see this, and you don't understand the difference between these two. Because when you come back home and sit on the dining table, then you will understand. In the kitchen itself, it will be clear. Is it a pure butter or it has got a margarine also? Margarine immediately, 100 degree, in a frying, immediately it evaporates. But butter doesn't do it. And taste is different. But how can we check it? We can check it by using a DTA. For example, you see this margarine, if you do a DTA, it shows exothermic field, 3 exothermic peaks. The characteristic temperatures are shown here. This is for margarine. This is endotherm. Sorry, these are endotherm. So see, the arrow mark is important. Many times endotherm is down the baseline. But here it is shown above. You can show both. So what you have to do is you have to indicate what does that mean. This is endotherm up. If you do endotherm down, it will be reverse. It will be inverse to what we see here. Above the baseline, below the baseline. You'll be fine. There's no problem. Okay. Now you compare with the butter under same temperature circumstances. DTA of the butter shows a profile like this. Margarine shows this. If you have a mixture of these two, you will have some complications here. So by knowing the DTA curves of an individual margarine or butter, you can find out the contamination, if any, in the market. If both are mixed, for example, if the both are mixed, then what will happen? You will have a combination of peaks in between two them. That means your butter is not pure butter, it is a mixed. How much mixing is done by knowing these peak areas and calibrations, we can even measure how much margarine is mixed in the butter. So this is a classic example of PG and GPA applications as far as the food industry is concerned. This is one example. Such examples can be given for oil also. Contamination, food contamination is checked by DPA and TGA, by food testing laboratories. Very easy, because basically you have two components. Two components, they have response, they are different chemical structures, different physical properties, so their response to the temperature will be different. These people cannot be knowing that. But as a scientist, you bring the sample and you can see the difference here. In the sense, we can have, for example, we can say different responses are there, and we know the response of the pure component, one pure component to, and we need these two and have a calculation for it, and then simply run that sample coming from the market, and you can see what we have done. So this is what food testing laboratory does this. Okay. Now, there are some disadvantages as far as DPA is concerned. You can't get the information about heats of fusion. Transition or reaction estimates about 20 to 50%. But otherwise, there are so many advantages, and that is why DSC comes. If everything is given by DTA, if everything is given by TGA, why we need DSC? Of course, it is not market demand. It is the science which demands it. It is the principle change which demands it. So next comes my last part of the talk is on the DSC, and I see my lecture is up to 12:30. We started at I think 10 o'clock, 11:30. So I have another. My watch shows about 20 minutes. So I'll try to finish it up and take some questions. Okay. Now DSC. DSC means differential scanning calorimeter. What it measures the heat into the sample or out of the sample. I have already told you. There is a magnitude involved here. There is a direction involved here. Direction of heat flow. Because when you say flow has to you have to indicate the direction. The differential calorimeter measures the heat of a sample relative to a reference. Here also a reference is taken and a sample is taken. Then you measure the heat of a sample relative to the reference. Now, differential scanning calorimeter does both. It measures the heat also. It measures the relative heat also. So then by getting the type of heat flow, for example, when I say heat flows into the sample, that becomes endothermic. Exothermic is heat flows out of the sample. Means when you heat a sample, you are getting heat released. Heat release. When heat is released, it is exothermic. When heat is absorbed, it is endothermic. Simple. By knowing the exothermic or endothermic appearance, you can understand what is happening to heat, whether the substance is absorbing the heat, whether the substance is releasing the heat. Based on that, you can have a phase transition. Which phase transition, which phase change involves the heat absorption, which phase transition gives the heat out. Okay, so endothermic, exothermic processes can occur, and ultimately we are able to measure what is called heat capacity. Modern equipment will give you heat capacity value by simple calculation. Heat capacity is a very, very important property in all electronics applications. Heat capacity is how much heat it can store. If it is more than that, it will burst. For all electrical applications, capacitors, diodes, you require these heat capacity values. Okay, the principle involved here is, this is a typical equipment which looks, this is a commercial equipment. There are 4 or 5 companies in the world which produce. As far as our department is concerned, yes, we have an equipment, TGA equipment from TA Instrument, TA, and we have a Hitachi eye sensitive DSC. Okay, you have a sample here, we have an empty here, sample temperature, reference temperature, both are heated and the temperature difference is measured and that is converted into heat flow. DSC, heat flow. So this is, of course, this is a simple DSC works like this. In a simple DSC, actually there are three kinds of DSC measurements. This is, I written here. A is conventional DSC. Conventional DSC means you take a sample, you take an empty is nothing but a reference here, a reference system. For example, indium. Indium is used as a reference substance here. I may be able to mention, I think I mentioned somewhere what are the references which are used. Aluminum is used, pure aluminum is used as a reference. So you have a reference here, you have a sample here, both are heated and there is a change in the temperature. You measure, nothing happens to the reference, but sample undergoes the transition and because of the heat change, there is a temperature difference and that temperature difference is converted into heat flow. If you do this, this is a conventional DSC. Then there is another one, it's called power compensated DSC. In power compensated DSC, temperature difference between the sample and reference are compensated for varying the heat required to both the pans at the same temperature. That means you have a reference sample here, sample it is here, sample nothing happens, but sample, the given sample undergoes some transition. That means the heat is absorbed or heat is evolved. Now, from outside, power is compensated to maintain the temperature of sample and reference constant. Here also you get delta heat flow, how much power you have to supply, how much energy difference is, and then in that case, the energy difference is plotted as a function of sample temperature. So this is called power compensated DSC. There is one heat flux DSC also. This is called heat flux DSC. When you are buying or when you are thinking to buy an equipment, you'll find out with these people what type of DSC they have. The heat flux DSC applies is a single furnace, heat flow into both the sample and reference material by an electronically heated constant thermoelectric disk and is proportional to the difference in output of the two thermocouple junctions. In fact, this is the most sensitive equipment and a costly equipment, heat flux based. What they do, they flow the heat into the sample, into the reference, and then measure the outflow. Both will release the energy, heat flow. How much heat flow I have given, I know. How much heat is coming out of that sample, out of the difference. In case of difference, because it is not, everything comes out. But in case of sample, it undergoes some transition, so it absorbs heat or it adds heat. So based on that, the heat flow, comes out will be different. So by measuring that, you can have a DSC. Here also, the heat flow is plotted as a function of temperature. What is important, the sample preparation is very, very important in this kind of DSC measurements. For example, the sample can be a bulk, solid, powder, liquid, gel, because nowadays modern equipment, they are measuring high sensitivity DSC, heat flux based. They can measure the heat transitions or heat flow transitions in the liquid also. I told you already, nowadays people are working with semi-solids and ionic liquids. You might have heard ionic liquids. The ionic liquids are nothing but a liquid state, or they are just liquid at 100-degree temperature. So naturally, you need to have some kind of measurement way of measuring these liquid samples. So you can have a liquid also. Samples are different and they cost a lot. So if you want to, you are buying, you please buy, asking what is the sample holder which he is supplying and what are the samples you have, what type of samples you have. You can have a thin film also, you can have a sheet also, you can have a laminate sheet also, you can have a textured palette also, you can have powder, you can have a bulk solid. So depending upon that, the sample holders have to be purchased. Please don't think that they will provide everything to you. You ask them what they are providing, you must study their literature and then ask for specific to your requirement. These TSC pans, this is a pan actually, aluminum, platinum, sample, steel, and these are the platinum. These DSP pans are made up of aluminum, platinum, stainless steel, silver, copper, ceramic substance like this. So depending upon the temperature at which you want to go, depending upon the inertness of the sample holder, you can choose any of them. And some commercial equipments are very, very They fix these things. So you have to be very careful about that. So the standards I told you, we have gold, we have lead, we have bismuth, we have SN, and we have indium. Normally they provide these two, indium and SN. They don't provide them. You have to purchase them separately. So this is for measuring or calibrating the instrument because their heat flows or their heat changes are well known. So that is very, very important. These are the precautions you have to take in the DSC measurement. DSC measurements are very sensitive. If you do any mistake anywhere, even it may reflect in the transition, but that really is not the transition. So baseline correction is very important. Calibration is very, very important. Now, you weigh samples before and maybe after experiment. Please ensure that there is no contamination or contamination of any other substance in the unit. For example, when you are synthesizing in the laboratory, ensure that all are removed. Excess reactants are removed. Solvent is removed. Nothing is added from outside because this is a very sensitive technique. It will show you. It will show you that there is impurity. In fact, DSC is the best way of measuring impurities, chemical impurities in the sample. What can we measure from DSC or DTA? Glass transition. Glass transition, I need not explain, but glass transition is an inner phase transition. In polymer substances, glass transition is very, very important. Metal oxides is very, very important. In polymer substances, there is nothing like a crystalline state. You don't find 100% crystalline polymer samples at all. Polymer samples, maximum of them are existing in amorphous state. You know that physical state of aggregation, amorphous and crystalline. The amorphous phase of polymer state is complex. Again, the amorphous phase, that is single amorphous phase, is divided into subphases. Those people who teach polymers, who work in polymers, must be knowing this. Then what they have? They have a glassy state, they have a rubber-like state, they have a viscofluid state. These three are inner phase transitions. From transition from glassy to rubber-like or rubber-like to glassy, reverse, is called glass transition. From rubber-like to this viscofluid is called flow temperature. So when you are talking about polymers, you don't talk about melting temperature. You talk about glass transition temperature. You talk about flow temperature. And yes, beyond that, if there is any other state, that will also melt. You have a melting temperature. They have, and they don't have, of course, decomposition temperature. And polymers never evaporate, or they don't have a boiling point because polymer chains are broken into small units, high temperature. So there's nothing like a evaporation. There is only decomposition. So when you are talking about polymer substances, you come across with again glass transition temperature. Of course, below that there is a crystallization temperature, glass transition temperature. From amorphous to, for example, when you say amorphous to crystallized temperature. So when you take a polymer, you get a glass transition temperature, you get a flow transition temperature if you observe carefully to DSC or DTA, and you get a crystallization temperature, and you get a decomposition, melting temperature, then you get a decomposition temperature. It's a very complicated, rich phase. All those things can be measured here, and we can also measure heat of fusion, which DTA cannot give. So these things can be done. Here also we can follow the, so I have written here some important endothermic and exothermic processes, which we can observe from the ST. For those people who are working in materials, you are understanding the physical properties, and ultimately you are end up with an application. Then you have to show all these things. You have to characterize all these things. For example, in the endothermic process, it can be fusion. Fusion is a diffused melting. Vaporization, sublimation, desorption, reduction. Reduction is endothermic. Oxidation is exothermic. For organic chemists, reduction, oxidation I can easily see from an instrument. If reduction occurs in the heating, it will be endothermic. If oxidation occurs, it's an exothermic. Decomposition, degradation, glass transition. Now, exothermic is crystallization is exothermic. Condensation, solidification, absorption, precipitation, oxidation, degradation, curing. Do you think anything is left? When you do in a laboratory, you come across all these processes. And all these processes are well defined in terms of, let us say, definition, teaching. But I want to see through a prism of an instrument when the process is occurring. That you can see from DSC and DPA. And that is what I told you. Thermal methods are fingerprint methods for monitoring what is happening in terms of chemically and physically within the substance when we heat it. That heating, you can find out its nature. Okay. Then these experiments can be made, dynamic heating, isothermal heating you can make, and you can get kinetic parameters and thermodynamic parameters. A typical DSC, for example, glass transition is shown like this. This is a very important slide for those people who are dealing with some kind of research where you use these thermal methods. Glass transition is never seen. It is a subphase, inner phase transition. It is not seen like a sharp peak or something like that. It is in the baseline change. Crystallization, yes, it is exothermic. Yeah, above exothermic, normally above exothermic, below is endothermic. Crystallization is exothermic. This is melting. The melting is again here endothermic. And curing, see, this is the difference between curing. Those people who are working with polymeric resins, epoxy resins, phenolphthalein resins, any resin has got a property of curing. You cure it. You cure it under certain conditions. For example, I mean, those people who are not aware about this curing, let us say when a tire is punctured, what we will do? We go to the shop and then that fellow fixes the puncture. How we fix it? He takes another piece of rubber and he adds that rubber piece to this rubber and buy a solution. That solution is nothing but a curing agent. It's a sulfur-based solution, polysulfide solution. So then you both things together and put some heating and both will stick together. That is what they call puncture. Puncture, actually they don't do puncture, they repair the puncture. So that simple curing is involved. And in a curing is occurring or not curing is a broad and you get an exothermic peak like that. Oxidation like that. So just by knowing this curve, you can imagine what will happen. I am basically a physical chemistry teacher. I tell my MSc students that in physical chemistry experiments, of course, I don't go to the lab. I don't see what they are doing. But at the end of 4 hours, when they come to me with a graph, I will simply tell what they have done. And they are shocked. They say that you have done this mistake. Sir, how you know it? From the measurement, from looking at the figures, from looking at the data. So this is how a DSC measurement value, what type of sample you have. Okay, then a few examples, then I will stop of DSC. These are very important examples I have collected. Take for example polyethylene terephthalate. I explained you that when you take a polymer sample, heat it, it will having a rich thermal behavior. You will see a glass transition. You can able to see glass transition. It's a baseline shift. Then crystallization doesn't have a flow temperature. Crystallization and melting. Crystallization is again melting is endothermic. Actually, the endo is above, exo down. He has written here. Be careful when you are looking at these creative traces. They write you have to mention up and down. You can do both. There's no problem. Here it is exo down. This is exothermic and this is endothermic. So it shows classically. See glass transition temperature, and this glass transition is nothing but the amorphous phase. Amorphous phase gets crystallized because polymer phase, they are polymer chains. Chains are long molecule, long chain molecules, high molecular weight, so they are lethargic. They don't organize themselves like that. You have to give a kind of movement to them. That movement comes from thermal movement. When the thermal movement means you have to heat them. If you want to see a polymer crystal, you have to heat, don't cool. If you cool, polymer becomes rubbery. They are lazy, like me. So because they are having long chains, and these long chains cannot get organized in such a way unless and until we give thermal movement to them. So because of that, crystallization occurs at high temperature, 144. Classic example of polyethylene, for example. Polyethylene crystallizes at 120 in a molten state. And then it becomes melting here. So you can see all those things here. It's an endothermic peak. It is simple melting or solidification. One can see it. And this is very important. You can measure the purity of Most of the pharmaceutical industries nowadays have got a DSC, high sensitive DSC. No, in drug chemistry you need. When you research a drug, when you're working on a drug contains lot of polymorphs. Polymorph means different morphological forms are there. One of the polymorphical form is drug. The other one is not. So it's very important to isolate this drug. Drug industry is a multi-million dollar industry because of this problem. You can invent drug, but the thing is drug has to be isolated to its purity. So in order to determine the purity required in case of drug, it is like a gold, you know. I want a drug which is 99.99% pure. And you know the atomic purity. Atomic purity gets into 99 after the 5 digits. So if you anybody go to the bank and purchase gold, on gold it is written 19.9, 24 karat gold is 99999, 5 nines. Otherwise, these ladies won't buy that gold. Now, who check this? How much purity it is? DSA will give you the checking of that. The same is with the drugs. So, if you want to check the purity, simply what you do, you have an equation here. In this equation, there is a sample here, and this is a pure component, and pure component 100% pure. But some sample which contains some impurity, then you can get this equation, basic equation. In fact, you see, this is how we can measure the fraction transformed. From this we can get this x value, and from this equation simply what you are measuring, you are measuring simply TS and TA. T is for the pure component, TS is for sample, rest of the things are coming from the instrument itself. You can get the purity. Here also same thing, oxidation becomes endo, classic nanoparticles. Nanoparticles, when you heat them, they get oxidized. And size also you can see. Size can be SEM, TM will give you the size, and this is oxidation is occurring. And this is another classical example of, let us say, if you have a complicated, metal oxide like geolite type or something like that, then you will understand what is happening to the heating. And if you see different compositions, the moment I am changing the composition of this alloy or compound, then you can see the appearance of the sharp peaks and they are shifting. So this indicates that the melting temperatures are different, and the crystallization or melting, whatever it is, crystallization from amorphous phase. In fact, it's reverse. What they are studying is they are studying the crystallization from an amorphous phase. And if the crystallization occurs, you will get the sharp peaks, sharp exothermic peaks. Crystallization is exothermic. So naturally, if you see it here, this is not sharp, but this is sharp here. This is one. Two types of crystallines or morphologies are common. Here you don't see anything. What is the difference then? You are heating the same thing, but some position is different. Here written aluminum 10Y5Ni. It is 8,7Ni. So by doing small changes in the for example, if it is here 5Ni, 7Ni, 10Ni, you are changing the composition of this whole alloy. With small, then you are trying to find out a crystalline form of the substance. In order to locate this, now ultimately they are successful here. Here, this composition gives you two sharp crystalline peaks, and this is the amorphous. So naturally, you are looking for an oxide composition or a very alloy type, and ultimately application. You want it in amorphous form, you want it in crystalline form. Then where to get the crystalline form, amorphous form, at what temperature, at what composition. If you want to do that, then you have to come to DSC. So then you can get the idea, whatever you want. And this is again a Kissinger equation. Basically for DSC it is used. Here the heating rate is different. So you get the DSC at different heating rates, and then you can get the peak temperature, then use the Kissinger equation, you get the activation energy. Simple Kissinger equation looks like that. For example, this is the last slide, I think. Yeah, so you have a DSC at 5 degree, 10 degree, 30 degree, 40 degree, 50 degree. This is what I want to emphasize for the young people. Nowadays, in research, any DSC, simple DSC, people are not accepting. You have to carry out this DSC in cooling and heating mode at the function of heating. See it here, same sample, and just change the heating rate. See, the appearance of peak is changed and the shifting is done. Otherwise, if you do this and report this, matter is over. But the same sample, if you report for 50 degrees, you will see a totally different picture. Sample is the same, process is the same, things are changing. And because of that, this is for a thin film of this substance, and then from different heating rates, using this Kissinger equation, I showed you this equation, it's a linear type equation, you can get the slope. From the slope, you can get the activation energy. This shows activation energy here. So from the slope, you can get the activation energy. So from the activation energy, you can understand what is happening from the mechanistic point of view. So this is about, this is what I want to share you. I hope I'm a little bit fast, please excuse me for that. But I try to, in summary, I told you about the TGA, DTA, DSC methods, which are very, very important, just not only for checking the thermal stability of a compound, but also what are the various physical and chemical processes which occur in the substance under different heating conditions. And from knowing these changes, we can understand the processes which are going on, whether it is chemical, whether it is physical, and ultimately we find an application to this material. You want it in amorphous state, you want it in crystalline state, you want them in semi-crystalline state, you want them in molten state, you want them in cured state. Not only that, we can find out the impurity part of that, and that will help testing the purity of the samples. So this is what I want to tell you and share with you. We can take few questions.